Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the HR and Payroll 2.0 podcast. I'm Pete Tiliakis, and as always, I'm joined by the legendary Julie Fernandez. Welcome, Julie.
Thanks, Pete. It's good to be back home. I know we've both been jetting around here a little bit. It's event season, so welcome back.
Yeah. Likewise. I was a little tired this weekend after getting back from Dayforce Discover. That's what we're going to talk today. It was a busy week, man. A lot going on there at Dayforce. Congrats to them. And I thought we could break it all down and then head back out on another one and get ready to record that one when we get back. So yeah.
Sounds
and I know
great.
You were there. You spent the week there as well.
I was there as well. In fact, I actually go out usually the partner day. Not only mix and mingle, but some partner stuff starts a day earlier. So I went out and was out for Monday. And then I think most of the rest of the world kind of kicks in and comes in and starts in earnest on Tuesday. So
Yeah. I came in Tuesday, spent Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And Wednesday, we got a long day with the executives, the analysts track. So that was nice. We got some private demos. I got to hang out on the floor and ask some questions and talk to some folks, have lunch with some people, some clients. I got to kind of sample it all. So I was excited to be there. And I thought we could break it down. There's a lot here. If you want to, we'll run through it.
Yeah. Why don't you? Let's see. Usually you have a framework in mind. So let's figure out where you want to get started.
All right. So let's just talk about what happened, right? So Dayforce Discover, technically the second one, because I look back, 23, we were still saying Ceridian Insights. So we've matured into Dayforce Discover now, second year. I realized, Julie, I don't know about you, but I've been going to Ceridian Insights now for almost 10 years as an analyst. 2016, I think it was my first one.
Yeah, I've probably been doing it about the same length of time.
And I don't know how long it's been around. I think maybe only a few years before that, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 13, 14, something like that. So look, it's come a long way. And I don't know how many people were really there, but it was quite well attended. I thought it was one of the bigger ones I've seen. And I heard the party was wild.
Definitely in the thousands for sure.
Yeah.
And it was really difficult to gauge because the hotel and the venue was so scattered, right? I mean, if people didn't put in all of their steps and then some, going from one end of the place to the other, it is great to get your steps in for sure.
Yeah, the Wynn's very classy place, and you're right, it is sprawling. It was good. But look, I mean, I think it's interesting, right? I mean, this was the first Dayforce Discover as a newly non-public company. I guess for a little longer they'll be public, I suppose, until the deal closes. But yeah, man, $12.3 billion that Thoma Bravo stepped up and paid for Dayforce. I think you could see there was some refreshed branding around. I don't know if you noticed a little bit more colorful Dayforce. A little bit more youthful, a little more welcoming. I think in the words they used, David Ossip used was approachable. They wanted to have a more approachable brand. And I thought it was interesting, Julie, that he kicked off the day one, I don't know if you're at the keynote, by giving out his email, right, in terms of that approachableness or approachable branding. And I think it's important to point out that, I don't think that's gimmick, right? I don't think that's just words. They talked about their 98% retention rate. That's pretty impressive, right? And I think that echoes across their leadership team. I think every one of them offered us their email, and has, the clients seem to love that, and they seem to be very much walking the talk, I guess was what I would say, because it's coming through. Yeah,
I can tell you for a fact that I have one large global client who did just that. She was a Dayforce client. She, I don't think, had been part of that decision, and they were having some issues, and she just went direct on the horn to David and said, "Hey, you gave out your information and found him to be quite helpful, and has gone to him again since. Not frequently. You don't want to overuse the calling card, right? But I do know that there are leaders that have taken him up on that, and I think that makes a big difference. And I also know that they're very good at putting prospects in front of David with some one-on-ones. So I had at least one company that I was with there while we were there, and they had their one-on-one time with David Ossip, and that's actually cool. Makes an impression.
Yeah. And I don't think it's limited to him, right? I think I heard that from their other executives, and I had lunch with a gentleman who's been a client for nearly a decade, and they said, it's fact. They're very, very approachable, and he feels very comfortable calling them when he needs something. So very cool. That's refreshing, right? I think it's good stuff. So. Yeah. So look, I think that, overall, really impressive week. I mean, I think all the HCMs have really been bringing it this fall. Dayforce is very much, I think, leaning into a platform now, right? And not so much just products. And they're becoming an ecosystem. And I had a lot of conversations with partners, SIs mostly, and
Mhm.
service providers that were out there, with a lot of plans. And I think that there's a lot of excitement for the platform, a lot of excitement for just some of the things that were coming out, but also just where Dayforce is as a platform. I think one of the things that I've always noticed, and I think we've talked about it, Julie, is just that I think Dayforce has always been very strong on the core side of their platform, right? They're very strong on the frontline capabilities when it comes to scheduling and time and
Payroll and
attendance,
time, yeah.
right? Global payroll, benefits has always been pretty robust. And that was all very unsexy, kind of complicated stuff that Dayforce leaned double down on, I would argue, triple down on, especially from a data perspective. Whereas maybe some of their peers went a little bit away from that and got deeper into more talent and different areas. But no less an area Dayforce has obviously bolstered with various different ads and acquisitions and things on the talent side. But I think they've really set themselves up in a really formidable way to build on and now do a lot more with their platform that they've been wanting to do with the AI and analytics and many other things. So yeah, I think they're in a good place. And when you listen to their customers, they're I was listening to some of the data points they gave us around full suite. 72% of deals are now full suite. 95% of the enterprise sales are full suite. And they are at 138% year on year talent add ons in the platform. So clearly the platform's getting wider and the customers are following into that from that perspective. And as I talk to customers, many of those that I spoke to certainly began on that core side and have slowly inched their way
That's
into
right.
other
That's
things.
right.
So yeah, it's definitely coming through, right? And you're seeing a lot more folks leaning in.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Julie, one thing I did hear that I thought was pretty cool. Part of some of their success was that Dayforce, that is that they are leaning on more account based sales
Mhm.
and working with their customers to make sure they're optimizing their investments and growing their portfolio, and hopefully making them stickier, of course, but making them more successful with the solutions that they're offering. So yeah, very very well positioned with the front line, I would say. A lot of strength there.
Yep.
And yeah, now about 77,000 customers, over
Mhm.
7,000 live on the
Over
platform.
7,000. Yeah.
Government of Canada coming live soon. That's a massive one we're all kind of able to watch unfold in the news. They did mention UPS is an
UPS,
adopter.
yeah.
That's a big one. Even some customers, I think they said they have customers as big as 650,000 employees, multiple 100+ thousand customers. And a lot of those are really, again, those gnarly frontline, heavy hourly shift swapping union
Yep, yep.
sort of customers. So I think they're winning in those ways in that area. And again, just continuing to kind of show their prowess there. So, and
That's
don't
right.
forget all the compliance services that are underneath all of that, which again, very unique
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
think about some of their peers that aren't necessarily going into those markets.
yeah.
So,
Well, you can't
yeah,
win with the front line if you don't have a strong core and the nitty-gritty
yeah.
of payroll and time, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I think their value prop here for global payroll and global time is unique as well, right? I mean, they have an opportunity to compete on par with UKG and some of the other firms that are out there with very strong workforce management, but they can obviously come with more when it comes to payroll and HCM and that sort of thing. Now, here's something, Julie. I know we joked around, right, about Thoma Bravo buying them, and there's been that Coupa sort of wedge, but I think it was made pretty clear to the analysts that Dayforce has no intention of becoming an ERP.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
very focused on the problems that they believe need to be solved in the HCM space and the planning space and that stuff. They've got their eye on and feel like there's plenty of green space there. Don't need to go and tackle the big the big ERP part. So
yeah.
yeah, you want to talk about some of the announcements, some of the products here.
Yeah, why
All
don't we
right.
go? Let's
So let's start. I'm gonna go really slowly here because there's a lot to unpack, and I want to go through some of the press releases so you can get the wording on some of these things. But obviously, partners are key. Dayforce wants to get up to around 70% with their deployments, so that SIs are managing most of that. They're now at about 40%, so that means they've got to get obviously much more enablement there. And I think what's interesting when you walk around the expo, I actually spent most of Thursday out there. There's some new partners, right, that are popping up that I didn't know of, right, before. And maybe they've been around,
Mhm,
maybe I just
mhm.
didn't see them. And I'm hearing of more boutiques that are popping up. But certainly there was some buzz of maybe some mergers and some acquisitions and some get togethers by some of the SIs and some of the consultancies. So you can see there's
Yeah,
this swirl, I think, of Dayforce opportunity in the ecosystem, in the platform, that is creating more SIs, more consultancies, and more opportunity for those that are playing in that space. So
Yeah, and that's both
yeah,
larger and kind of the typical niche boutique areas, right? So we see
yeah,
some of the big four actually getting into having a Dayforce practice,
oh yeah,
and then of course it's always been a great space for niche players. And for a while there was a plethora of them, and then they kind of called the herd and got a little bit more selective. And I think now if you're going to scale, you really do have to be able to bring, a broad
yeah,
partner ecosystem. What's always interesting to me is that buyers sometimes, have a preference one way or the other. So you
yeah,
still have to remain, close and kind of listen. A lot of buyers will assume that they get better service and better results one way versus the other. And I've
yep,
heard the argument on both sides of the coin. So
yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
sure there's a clear, better way to do it. But to scale the way they want to, they certainly do
yeah.
push some more of that implementation deployment out to the partner
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you
ecosystem.
look at the, you're right. And if you look at the Dayforce partner announcement that was made, there was a press release on the expanded Dayforce partner network. You'll see they mentioned in there, right off the top, service delivery expansion. Dayforce is partnering with Deloitte, CGI, Align HCM, and others to boost implementation. That means giving them more tools and more help to make the partners more successful, right? And certainly as
Right.
more partners come about, you're going to see that expand. And I think maybe that enablement will be key. And then of course, if you go on and on down that press release, you'll see there's more build out around the community partnerships, which I think is interesting. Dayforce really emphasized that the community breadth and depth of what they have to offer each other in that community, both partners and buyers and alike. And then, of course, technology partnerships. And I think that's where we're going to see things like the announcement around Microsoft, right? That is not just a unification of interoperability between Microsoft solutions and Dayforce. Obviously, there's that overlap. We've seen all the HCMs go here, overlapping the work tech, if you will, with HCM tech. But what's interesting here, Julie, is this is actually a co-sell motion as well that will allow them to pair HCM and ERP together. So it's a little bit more than just, say, Copilot operating well with Dayforce Assistant.
Right.
And I
Right.
think what you're going to see is more of this, right? More of the as the zero UI comes in and the UX breaks down. I think you're going to see more interoperability where you can play with things like ChatGPT and Gemini and whatever Copilot, and whatever else is out there that you might be
Yeah.
using in your business, Salesforce or ServiceNow or something like that.
Well, and look, it might not be your first inclination, but as an HR leader and HR buyer of technology, what that means is that these combinations of things lend themselves to different selections and advisory items. So,
Yeah,
we don't do systems integration where I work as an advisor, but we advise the systems integration partners. So as you move to models where there's more, more choices and more options for deployment, you actually have to think and plan in sometimes a selection in order to figure out who the best alternative would be. And the same happens
yeah,
with technology partners or other things that you might pair with the offering itself.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of part of the challenge in the market is there's so many options for everything, right? It's very very confusing where to start and where to go. So, but yeah, I think everyone needs help, right? Okay, major announcement. Probably the coolest thing that got announced this week was the addition of strategic workforce planning. And I think just again, go back to all that I talked about in the core, right? The blocking and tackling, the strategic workforce management that you already have now, the ability to manage compliance in all of that. But now you have this addition of Agentnoon acquisition. I'm not totally familiar with Agentnoon. What I thought was interesting when I heard from they had their leaders come in and talk to us, the founders. Their origin story was rooted in them solving a problem for themselves, and basically developed it out of necessity to help them with, basically managing their and planning for their workforce.
Right,
What
right.
I think is interesting here is that the goal is a continuous planning capability, right? Dayforce wants you to be able to continuously be able to have a pulse on your skills, your workforce, what's happening with that, what you need when you need it, what it's costing you, all of those sorts of things. So I think that just a beautiful pairing here. It does step towards that ERP kind of side of things, but perfectly fits and makes a lot of sense, right? It's the same thing we saw with HiBob, right? Picking up what was it, Mosaic, all makes perfect sense, and I think going to bring a lot more value to Dayforce customers now with that strategic workforce planning, SWP as they were calling it. And yeah, just a new toy here to really, really create a lot of clarity for the workforce
Yeah.
analytics.
Yeah. And for some businesses, it's not a priority, but for other industries that are
Yeah,
purely talent, right? All of their makeup is essentially people.
yeah,
That can be a critical piece that you
yeah.
really
And
can't live without.
think about the new personas too they can touch here. The CFO will be interested in this. The CIO will be interested in this. I think it creates an opportunity for Dayforce to maybe enter the business through a different door, possibly. You never know,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, well timed. Just a nice fit. I think it's going to be cool to see what they do with that. Julie, I thought it was interesting. One thing I did pick up on from the leadership team, they talked about buying solutions, right? Because they've been very selective. The few things that Ceridian or
Hmm.
Dayforce
Hmm.
now has bought, but they mentioned they don't normally buy things they can't re-platform in less than a year. So the point is, it must be a tech fit too, right? There's a strong,
Right. Right.
tech alignment that needs to happen there too. They're not just buying something to buy it. It's got to be a nice fit for many many reasons. So I like that.
Did that come along with any preview in the things that you heard of, like, what areas they might be most interested in, or
Well, again,
just
continuous planning, right? I think that's something we heard over and over again.
okay,
The long term
okay,
goal with this is continuous planning. So I think that makes a lot of sense when you think continuous payroll calculations, right? They've got sort of a continuous capability on their time management side of things. Now with workforce planning, I think, and you think about Dayforce Assistant and analytics, I think you can see there's just
yeah,
constant real time analytics and real time insights, predictive. I'm sure we're going to get there too. So yeah.
yeah, okay,
Okay, couple things to talk about that are also new. The new UX. I don't know if you noticed, Julie, but I thought it was eye catching. It really did. I made the comment to the team, the product team that demoed it to us. I said, I noticed it in the demos. I said it has a very social media feel, and they said yes. They smiled. I think that's what they're going for.
yeah,
A very engaging widgets. Layout. Again, very colorful, on brand with the new sort of engaging colors. But I thought it was really really cool. It looks really good. And here's the thing I thought was interesting. I don't know if you picked up on this from the keynote. Joe Korngeigel,
mhm,
who is the head of the products there. He said, look, we look at the UX in Dayforce much like the Golden Gate Bridge. I don't know if you know this, but like obviously the Golden Gate Bridge takes a beating with the weather and the elements there in San Francisco Bay. And by the time they're finished painting it, they've kind of got to start back over because it's began to rust and weather on the other side. And he said that's how they look at the UX. It's never ever going to be static. It will never
right,
finish. That it will always change and evolve. And I think what you're seeing them go towards is the very AI enabled, automated, eventually conversational, zero UI, zero UX, which everyone will probably land on. But I thought that was an interesting analogy.
analogy,
But
yeah,
Julie, I want to leave you with this one piece on this before we get into AI because I want to talk about AI. A client, this was really eye opening to me, and I think I knew this, but it was really having it said to you sometimes it triggers because I think I've kind of come up with this understanding across all of these firms that I've studied and talked to their customers. One of the gentlemen said to me, he said, I asked him about AI. I said, they're a mid-market company. I want to say it was about 5,000. I think they were like a manufacturer, but they had a lot of unions, something like that. And I asked him, I said, are you guys using AI in your business? And he said, not really, not yet. And I said, so on the front end of your business, your products, all that, no AI mandates. No, he said, no, not yet. And I said, do you have AI in HR? And he said, yes, by way of Dayforce. So
yeah,
I think we've come to this conclusion in some of our interviews with folks here is that for a lot of HR, this is the way they're going to get AI. It's
of
not going to be because
course,
their
yeah,
company gives them a
that's
bundle
right,
of money and says go do AI, right? And at the same time, it might be the only AI in the business in some cases because it's such a commercial grade solution.
yeah,
So I thought that was pretty interesting. That in some cases HR is leading the way where they're not actually necessarily being looked to lead the way, but they are right by way
sure,
of these things.
and safer and quicker by via your core strategic product, right? I mean,
Yeah,
having it built in and embedded, and then making the effort to turn it on or begin to utilize it is a
yeah.
much easier way to go than having to try to invent and deploy.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely, and that's a great segue, right? One of the things I also picked up on listening to the team was, that there's very much an opt-in, right? AI on your terms. You can opt in or opt out. Dayforce isn't forcing any of this on you, and you can digest it at your pace and as and when these things make sense for your business and your local needs and challenges. So, yeah, so I think they're on the right path. I mean, interestingly, they've got a new chief AI officer. I don't know if we had that last time we were there.
I
I
don't
forget his
recall,
name. I
actually.
apologize. I think that's nice. That's a good ad. Makes a lot of sense, right? And I think that I think Dayforce is in a real differentiated space right now. Again, with the foundational data and all the blocking and tackling really ticked and tied and buttoned up. I think they're in a great position to go and now do some of these great things that they want to do with their skills solution, with their recruiting capabilities, with the cool learning capability that came out, right?
Yeah.
Being able to
Yeah.
create content. So yeah, all that's now being powered by data. And just imagine all the things they can orchestrate across the use cases that they're already solving. I think there's a lot of opportunity here.
That's
So
right. That's right. Okay. So we're going to jump
yeah,
into AI next,
let's
right?
talk AI. Let's talk agents, right? So much to talk about here with agents. The usual characters as you would imagine. We've got a people analytics agents, pretty self-explanatory. It's gonna be surfacing insights to leaders, helping across all of the various use cases of HR, pay, time, talent management, that sort of thing. You got the content authoring agents, which are helping create things like goals and policies, job descriptions, employee communications. So that sort of generative capability. Pay agents, right? Helping employees explore and understand their pay details, helping them understand variances and get answers to and hopefully improve transparency. So that one obviously lifting a lot of weight off of payrolls back when you got people calling wanting to know the difference between this week's check and last week's check. And then of course time agents, right? Helping you figure out the right shifts, schedules, vacation balances, and so on. So your usual culprits for day-to-day tasks that are monotonous and painful for a lot of us. Dayforce Assistant, obviously getting more conversational, really becoming the front door. We talked about that. I think you'll see more of that. I thought this was cool, Julie, the workspace, the Dayforce AI workspace. I really liked a bit of the performance coaching in here. I don't know if you saw that on stage. They showed sort of the dialoguing back and forth for frontline managers, maybe first time managers, bouncing and role playing things off of the AI employee. That's really cool, right? I mean, if you're a first time
Yeah.
manager, you haven't really had that experience of coaching and counseling. It'd be nice to be able to do that. I'd love to have one for my kids. Maybe I can, maybe I can get, I could game the system, know what to say to get my kids to do what I need. But yeah, like I thought that was really practical, right? Very impactful for the front line. I love the compliance monitor. It's doing what I like to call orbiting you and making sure that you know about key regulations and surfacing the impact of that, helping you track audit trails for decision making around compliance. And again, other things too for the employee, right? Employee action plans, employee milestone creation, and various different support for them as they change roles or shift in different pieces of their role. So a lot going on here, right? I mean, just in terms of, but I love this AI workspace, right? The idea that you can kind of come in there and I don't want to say play around, but you can be getting help, right, with compliance, with role playing, in terms of performance and other analytic areas. So yeah, exciting
Yeah.
stuff there.
Well, I think one of the things that universally I heard from leaders and practitioners and clients who were there is just there's so much of that I think it can be challenging to wade through and differentiate exactly what's what, right? It's
Yeah.
really and that's the same with every one of these conferences and events we've been going to where AI is really on the runway. And so you
Yeah.
see it and you're like, oh, I heard the innovation keynote and it was kind of AI, but I think tomorrow is an AI keynote. And it's like, well, of course,
Yeah.
it's kind of everywhere, so it makes it a little
Yeah.
hard to kind of put into categories or buckets. So thank you for doing that
Yeah.
as a part of just walking through the different things that were shown
Yeah, I
and
got a few more,
touted.
Julie, actually.
Yeah,
Let's
let
see.
us have it.
So let's talk about Dayforce Communications. I thought this was pretty cool, right? Aiming to kind of fill the gap in comms where employees are going sort of outside work tech to collaborate. So think about, like, I was talking to one of the major, let's see, it was a hospitality organization. I won't say the name, not using Dayforce. This was a while back. And they were explaining to me that, look, to get any of our employees to engage with tech, it needs to be about them finding a shift, or filling a shift or checking their pay, right? Not uncommon of frontline employees, right? I mean, my
Right,
son, I
right.
think I've talked about him, how he thinks. Again, but that I think is giving, they're saying, hey, let's create more ways to create opportunities to communicate with these employees through various apps that they lean on the most. And so you can imagine time and attendance and other areas would be key there. So I think that's great. Also can help. It helps with building communities. And embeds AI for things like writing assistance and other sort of nudges and guidance. So Yeah, good stuff, right? I mean, I think
Yeah.
there's a little bit of something here for everybody is the takeaway. I've got more we could go on and on in terms of product, but I do got a couple of other things I think we should talk about that are important to point out. But man,
Okay.
just a lot there, right? A lot to digest from
Well,
Dayforce.
I
So
know I know you'll be releasing an article or something with some more
yes,
of the details soon enough. So
I
if
am.
folks are hungering for more, just give it a moment and Pete will
Yeah.
have some stuff out in the street.
I'll be breaking it all down. Yeah. Now, Julie, we talked a little bit about this, but the global payroll announcement I thought was nice that they're going to democratize a little bit and open up and allow, sort of bringing in ICPs that are not necessarily in their partner network, but maybe external to that,
Yep.
which I think is great. And I've got some questions into Dayforce to clarify some things around that. But really, I think it aligns with their mantra of looking to partners to fill gaps and enable services. So
Yeah. Yeah. So
Dayforce is covering most of the globe, but this will
if you
give you the
start
opportunity to
hearing
tie in others.
BYO, used to be bring your own device. I think I've heard BYOP a few times, bring your own payroll or bring your own partner is kind of the catchphrase that we might start to
Yeah.
hear more often.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah.
mean, Dayforce covers just about all of the globe by themselves already, right? I mean, between the 20 plus native engines and Excelity and Ascender and Atom down in LATAM, the former two being in Asia Pac, they pretty much got it filled out. And I think there's only a few partner gaps maybe, but then there might be solutions that you're using that are competitive to that. And I think it's nice now that they've opened that up and said, hey, control all that here. I'm just curious as to what extent they're going to allow you to orchestrate that or
That's
just
right.
necessarily pass data. So again, I got some questions in to confirm all
Yeah,
that.
in fact, to be quite honest, as you get the answers, there are others that have been
Yeah.
making similar overtures, and so a little bit of a
I think you
side-by-side
have to.
compare will be interesting.
Yeah, I think you have to do
Maybe for
this if
us
you're
to
going to
do.
move up market as they are, right? I mean, you got to be very flexible. Nobody's on one thing for payroll. It's almost impossible sometimes to time all that right.
That's
But
right.
hey, there's possibilities. Okay. Oh, Julie, this is another thing I picked up on. I think you might appreciate. So they have cleaned up. Dayforce has cleaned up its SKUs. I've
Mhm.
gotten it down to fewer than 100, where they were in the multi hundreds. So that's always good, and hopefully we'll get more clarity around that. As things develop and go along. AI, Julie, they're selling on a subscription based pricing right now. Maybe longer term usage or transaction based, but need to be very balanced with that with the client. So I think they're working closely with customers there. So that's about on par with the rest of the market.
Yeah, and is it similar on a PEPM type of a,
That's a
basis,
good
or they didn't
question.
really
I
I
didn't
don't
dig
know
into
if
that.
it's I don't know if we've seen enough of it. I know I haven't on
Yeah,
the client side seen enough of it yet to see exactly how
yeah,
that's fleshing out. And charging specifically for AI, the
yeah,
AI subscription, I think that's pretty early too,
yeah, yeah,
out in the
yeah,
marketplace. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, well, we'll see. I didn't get into that with them deeply. I think I asked that in one of my follow ups, so we'll get some clarity there. And then, of course, the other thing I think is important to point out, Dayforce is still committed to compliance. They're very very
Oh
much
yeah.
doubling down there. I think that's a deep differentiated heritage they have amongst their peers. They've been the go to in Canada. They've been the go to for compliance in the U.S. Very very strong there, and so they're in no way backing off of that. They say you're going to see more coming on that in 2026. And I would, they were already talking kind of compliance as a service last year, compliance as a platform. I think you're going to see more of that. And I think hybrid solutions like Flex, right, where you can, have a mix of compliance and talent, marketplace is the type of thing that you probably will see more of, right? More agile type capabilities. So,
Yeah, and listen,
yeah,
this was one of the, no secret that this was one of the domains that made them particularly interesting to Thoma Bravo,
yeah,
right? So,
for sure, for
yeah.
sure. Yeah, and of course, and again, lastly, I think I would just add that as most of the players out there are seeking to do, they want to use AI to try and help with the implementation, right? Bring the cost down, bring the speed to market, or speed to live, right?
Speech
Bring the
Live.
ROI much sooner, and maybe even get to some sort of a self-deploying capability. If maybe at some point, I would imagine we could if we get data moving in the right way and testing, automated and that sort of thing. You never know, right?
No, it
So
feels like the holy grail. I'm just saying, I know I'm
yeah,
a bit more of a skeptic coming from
yeah.
the client side, but
Well, you got
many have
self-healing
promised or
data.
spoken.
Yes. No, no, no. Yeah. I mean, those may be my words. I don't think Ceridian actually used those words, but that's kind of what
Yeah,
he sounds like, right? It kind of sounds very DIY when you
yes,
think about how impressive data move. I mean, look what they're doing at data scale, right? I mean, with
yeah,
data movement. So there's
yeah.
a lot of possibilities with what could happen if you could get it all strung together, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, anyway, man, that's a lot, right? I could
That
probably
is an
go
awful
on.
lot.
I know we probably burned people's ears off. We crammed a lot in there, but any other thoughts you had as you
A
exited
couple of
Vegas?
things. So, as you know, I spend a lot of time the practitioner side, prospects and
Yeah.
clients, when I'm at these events. And one of the things that I found really interesting was probably more attendees than I've ever seen before channeled into Dayforce Fit sessions. So,
Okay.
Fit sessions, FIT being focused interactive training,
Yeah.
and specifically where they're getting a little bit more hands-on and expertise
Yeah.
with the platform. And I just thought, I seldom see those happening at the same time as some of the keynotes. And in this
Yeah.
case, I think the attendance is such that there was enough demand for people to be in Fit sessions and still catch up with the keynotes as well. So they had some of those going on at the
Yeah.
same time as the keynotes, which
Yeah. Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
it just caught my attention that was the case.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, listen, and I think you should, right? Everybody goes to these events with a different lens and a different sort of, I don't want to say agenda, but like maybe just plan of what they want to get out of it. And if yours is about being hands on and meeting other users and talking with experts, maximize it, right? Maximize it. If it's not the, feel good keynote that's necessarily, motivating you that day, fine too, right? I mean, I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the point, right? Something for everyone. And I think that there is, what better place to find users and community and help than at these events? That's the whole point,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
yeah, good on Dave for giving people options, not forcing them to go to one thing or the other,
That's right. That's right. Because we
Yeah.
do all like options when push comes to shove. And then, of course, being in Vegas, we had the Sphere
Oh
that's
yeah,
there,
yeah.
and so Dayforce, took over the
Oh yeah.
Sphere parts of the time that it was there, which is awesome. Heard a lot of talk of folks going to Wizard of Oz, and then the Eagles. I don't know.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like the
Yeah.
20th time of a last performance is what I was. So there's
Yeah.
always a little bit of extra bonding happening when we're out at these things, and so those were definitely the talk of the town.
Yeah.
Whether you were there for Dayforce Discover or down the street was Success Factor, Success Connect. So,
Yeah.
again, it's hard to have a fall season with events without duplicating competing events at each end of the strip.
Oh
So
yeah.
there was some of
Yeah.
that going on this
There's
this
always
week
that,
too.
right? Always,
Yeah.
always. But yeah, no, it was good. Good week. So congrats to Dayforce. I think it was a good event. I'm going to be writing up an article about it and I'll have that out soon. But yeah, and I'll try to get some answers to some other things and add that into the article. But yeah, well, I guess, Julie, we'll be back with another one. Pretty sure there'll be another event very soon. I know I'm headed back out tomorrow to New York.
Hey, before we wrap this up,
Yeah.
I just have to say, I
Yeah.
have a shout out to a team that listens to us. I know
Okay.
because I've been told by their leader, so have you, that
Okay.
they listen to us regularly. The folks at Bridgestone Firestone,
Yeah.
they have a team over there, a payroll team, who's become, like
Yes.
avid listeners of the podcast just as a means of hearing and getting inspired about people that are elevating payroll and things that are going on in the industry. So, hey guys, shout out to all of you. It was
Yeah.
great spending a little bit of time with you over breakfast, and we love to hear it. And we'd love to hear more from folks that are listening and subscribing.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Yeah, thank you, Julie, for calling that out. And yeah, shout out to Barb and the team at Bridgestone. Great culture, great story. Really appreciate them. So yeah, thanks for everybody for listening and keep listening. Please stick with us. We got a lot more coming. Like, share, subscribe. All of it helps. All of it helps. So thank you. All right, Julie.
Till
Until
the
next
next
time.
time.